If I'd grabbed the cooler myself that morning, instead of letting Tessa pick it up, I'd be holding a grand champion check instead of a score sheet that says my brisket ate like pot roast. 15 years cooking together, and I covered for her. Probably just an off day for the cow, I said. But I knew that cow. I'd picked it out myself at the processor. The marbling was perfect. I remembered running my thumb over the cryovac and thinking, this is the one. So why did the brisket in my cooler look like select grade when I finally unwrapped it at midnight? At the Royal that year, my brisket got a 6.2 in tenderness. Tessa's got a 9.1. That number rode home with me from Kansas City like a pebble in my shoe. We'd cooked side by side under the same white canopy, same weather, same supplier, same grade, same processor. 6 days earlier, we had stood together in the walk-in at Prestige Meats, fingers numb, arguing politely over flats like church ladies choosing tomatoes. Tessa picked a gorgeous Australian Wagyu flat with feathered marbling clear through the lean. I picked one just as good, maybe better because the fat cap sat even and the flat didn't taper to nothing. I wrote my code on the package in black Sharpie, DRE 10-02. Tessa teased me about my forensic brisket behavior. I'm telling you, she said, hugging her flat to her chest like a baby. One day, you're going to put a brisket on the stand. If it lies to me, absolutely. That was us. Or what I thought was us. We met at a county fair cook-off when I was 29 and she was 31, both too proud to admit we didn't know what we were doing. I'd grown up in my father's butcher shop, but breaking down primals and coaxing smoke through meat are related skills the way cousins are related. Same reunion, different gossip. Tessa knew fire. She could listen to a smoker and tell if the dampers needed a quarter-inch adjustment. I knew cuts, fibers, fat, what a flat would do after 8 hours, and what it would refuse to do no matter how sweetly you talked. Together, we became Reyes and Vale Barbecue, then just R&V on banners, aprons, sauce labels, and the magnetic sign Tessa slapped on the truck door crooked every season. We weren't television famous. We had no restaurant, no grocery store rub line. We were weekend serious. Good enough to win trophies, gas money, and sponsor discounts that kept us going. Tessa was my best friend. She knew my mother's chemo schedule before my cousins did. I knew she cried every February on the anniversary of her divorce, though she blamed allergies. She had a key to my house, a drawer in my guest room, and an opinion about every man I dated since 2011. When my father died, she drove the competition trailer 8 hours back from Tulsa because I couldn't stop shaking long enough to hold the wheel. So when I opened my cryovac package at midnight in Kansas City and saw meat that did not match the one I'd selected, my mind did not go first to betrayal. It went to exhaustion, mix-up. Any door except the one with Tessa behind it. The flat inside the plastic had loose, watery grain and a dull brown edge where it had oxidized. The marbling was patchy and mean. The fat cap was thick at one corner and thin at the other, the kind of thing I would never choose for the Royal, unless someone threatened me with a clipboard. Tessa was trimming pork on the folding table, humming old Emmylou Harris, which she always did when nervous. Problem? She asked. I should have put the brisket in her hands and asked what she saw. Instead, I said, bad lighting. That was the first lie I told for her, before I knew I was doing it. She laughed. At midnight in a parking lot? Surely not. I cooked that flat because turn-in time does not care about your feelings. I trimmed around its sins, injected lighter, wrapped earlier, rested longer. I gave that sorry piece of meat every chance to become respectable. It came out tasting like apology. Tessa's brisket sliced like velvet. I watched her lay it into the turn-in box, each slice holding together until she bent it over her finger and it gave in one smooth curve. Beautiful, I said, because it was. She looked tired when she smiled. Thanks, Dan. The nickname landed warm then. Later, it would bruise. After scores posted, Tessa tried not to celebrate too hard in front of me. That was one thing that made the first crack hard to see. She didn't gloat. She put an arm around my shoulders and said, "You got hammered on tenderness. That's not you."
"Probably just an off day for the cow," I said. She squeezed me. "Happens." But cows do not change identity between the processor and the cooler. 2 weeks later, at a smaller qualifier outside Little Rock, I saw the detail that didn't fit and finally let myself look. We were loading the shared cooler in my driveway before dawn. Tessa had picked up the meat from Prestige the day before because I had a late shift at the community college cafeteria where I manage purchasing. We both had access to the wholesale account. Either of us could order, pick up, and pull receipts at tax time. For 15 years, that convenience had felt like trust wearing practical shoes. I opened the lid to check ice. Near the hinge was a cryovac package labeled in my handwriting, Wagyu brisket flat, DRE-10-18. The problem was the muscle grain visible through the plastic. It ran too coarse and straight. Wagyu usually has this soft snowstorm look in the lean, tiny seams of fat breaking up the muscle. This looked like something from a sale bin trying to pass under a better name. I lifted it toward the cooler light. "Tess," I said carefully, "does this look right to you?" She came around the truck bed with paper towels under one arm. "What?" "This flat." She barely looked. "Bad lighting." Same words, same shrug. A person can miss a note once. Twice, you start hearing the song. "You sure?" I asked. "Dana, it's 5 in the morning. Everything looks haunted in that cooler. Prestige wouldn't give us junk." True. Prestige Meats had been my supplier since my father's shop closed. Callie, who ran the front counter, knew my voice on the phone and my preference for thicker points. Their processor, West Fork, stamped every cryovac with batch codes and time labels because restaurants wanted traceability and competition cooks loved pretending we were restaurants. I set the brisket back down. "Yeah," I said, "probably." There is a kind of denial that looks like patience from the outside. I told myself I owed Tessa a reasonable explanation. Friendship meant not accusing someone because 2 pieces of meat had disappointed me. But I also did not tell her what I did next. Before we sealed the cooler, I photographed every package against the interior light. Brisket, ribs, pork butt, chicken thighs, label facing camera, batch code visible. Then I tilted each enough that the marbling showed through plastic. I made it look casual, like content for the team Instagram. Tessa watched me line up the brisket. "You documenting the crime scene?" "Quality control." "Your father would be proud. He'd ask why my focus is bad." She laughed and went to coil extension cords. That was my first deliberate move. Not a confrontation, not a speech. A log. I named a private album on my phone Cooler Light and started feeding it evidence I hoped I would never need. At Little Rock, my brisket finished middle of the pack. Tessa took second overall. Her brisket was first. On the drive home, Trophy wedged between her boots, she said, "You're overthinking tenderness. Sometimes you've got to cook what's in front of you." I did cook what was in front of me. She looked out the window. "You know what I mean?" I didn't anymore. The first receipt that changed my belief came from my own camera roll. 3 competitions into my private log, I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee and compared package photos to our order history from Prestige. Rain tapped the window. My dog Junie snored under the table like she was being paid by volume. At my day job, I can tell you what a case of romaine cost in March of 2019, and which vendor tried to slip in a fuel surcharge twice. Paperwork is not glamorous, but it has never once asked me to believe it on faith. The invoice for Little Rock showed 2 Wagyu brisket flats under the joint account, batch 77132 and 77135. My photo showed my label, DRE-10-18, on package 77132. Tessa's Instagram post from that weekend, second overall, firsting brisket, couldn't do it without my R&V family, showed her holding a raw flat before trimming. I zoomed until the image went grainy. On the package edge, half hidden by her thumb, I could read 77135.
That was fine. Then I looked at photos from our September Georgia qualifier, taken before I started intentionally logging everything. We'd staged packages in the cooler for social media. My brisket label read DRE0908. The processor stamp visible beneath the plastic read 42287. I opened the sanctioning body's gallery from that qualifier. Tessa had submitted a prep shot with her winning brisket. In the corner, her raw flat lay on the board. Processor code visible. 42287. My code. I sat back so fast, Junie lifted her head. No, I said. The camera roll did not prove she had swapped anything by itself. It proved my labels and batch codes were appearing where they should not. It changed my belief from something is wrong to someone is moving meat. There were only two someones with access to our coolers. The mature thing would have been to call Tessa and ask for an explanation. I am not always mature. I called Callie at Prestige instead. "Hey, Dana," she said over the hum of the front counter cooler. "You need flats for Shreveport?" "Eventually. Right now, I need account activity for the last few months." "Tax prep early?" "I'm impressed and suspicious." "Quality control." "That sounds less fun than tax prep." "Can you send pickup logs too? Dates, times, who signed? Same as last January?" Callie lowered her voice. "Everything okay?" "I'm checking something. I don't know what yet." She sent the logs in 38 minutes. The second receipt changed suspicion into timeline. The spreadsheet showed scheduled pickups, but also partial release entries I had never seen on invoices because they'd been folded into the same order total. Tessa had come in early, before 4 competitions. Not the day before, like she'd told me. Sometimes 2 days before. She signed for inspection/sample transfer, a phrase that made my neck prickle. For the Royal, the log showed Tessa Vale, 9:14 a.m., Thursday the 12th. 2 Wagyu flats released under account RV204. I was at work Thursday the 12th. I still had the cafeteria delivery sheet I signed at 9:07 for 20 cases of milk and a case of pears so green they could have been used as doorstops. Our scheduled pickup had been Tuesday the 17th. That night, Tessa texted me a picture of her dinner, soup in a chipped blue bowl I had given her after her divorce. "You alive? You've been quiet." I typed 3 answers and deleted them. "Just tired. Shreveport planning tomorrow?" She replied with a thumbs up and a brisket emoji. I hated that emoji for months. The next morning, I drove to Prestige before my shift. Callie was behind the counter, reading glasses on a chain. She looked at me once and stopped smiling. "Oh, honey," she said. "I need to understand inspection sample transfer." Callie glanced toward the cutting room door. "That's West Fork language. Product released from processor hold before final customer pickup. Usually chefs selecting from a split lot. Could one person pick up both orders? If they're on the account. Tessa is. I know." She tapped a pen against the counter, then set it down like she'd decided something. "There's somebody you should talk to. Eli is in back doing trim sheets. He checks in West Fork transfers." I knew Eli by sight. Narrow man, gray beard, canvas apron, expression like he'd been disappointed by every brisket before breakfast. We'd talked weather, meat prices, and once the criminal overuse of truffle oil at food festivals. Callie brought him out. He wiped his hands on his apron and looked from her to me. "Dana has questions about RV204, she said. Eli's eyes sharpened. He did not ask which questions. That told me something. He led me to the little office by the loading dock. A space heater clicked under a metal desk, though it was October. "I can show you account copies," he said. "I can't hand out company internals unless they pertain to your order." "They do." He studied me. "You're asking because you finally noticed the batch codes." My throat tightened. "Finally?" I wondered how long it would take. Anger is not always hot. Sometimes it is very cold and makes you polite. "You saw this happening and didn't tell me?" "I saw odd pickups. I saw transfers signed by an authorized account holder.
I saw a team arrangement I didn't understand. He held up a hand. That's not an excuse. I flagged it last spring. Supervisor said unless the account holder complained, it was customer service, not theft. Why now? He looked toward the loading dock window, where a truck was backing in with steady, irritating beeps.
I lost a season to a partner who swapped my chicken thighs for his at a regional in '09. Not the same scale, same stink. I accused him with nothing but temper and got labeled bitter. Eli pulled a folder from a stack. I told myself if someone ever came with the right question, I'd answer it. He photocopied 3 sheets and slid them across the desk. Internal processor transfer sheets, West Fork logo, order numbers, batch codes, release times. On the Royal sheet, 2 lines had been highlighted. RV204, Reyes Vale, Premium Wagyu Flat, batch 60218, pulled 852, released to T-Vale Crate B. RV204, Reyes Vale, Standard Prime Flat, batch 60304, pulled 857, released to D. Reyes Crate A. In the margin, block letters. Customer request split. TV confirmed. DR equals standard. My body went still. DR, I said. You, Eli said. She told them I confirmed that? That's what the sheet says. The other pages were similar. Premium to T-Vale Crate B. Standard or Prime to D. Reyes Crate A. Sometimes the price difference disappeared into sponsor credits or account balances. Sometimes it was billed under the joint invoice. She had not just taken better meat. She had routed inferior cuts into packages marked for me after I selected premium cuts. Physical swapping, paper swapping, smile on top. Can I keep these? Eli hesitated. You can keep copies tied to your account, he said. I wrote my name and number on the back. If the sanctioning body calls, I'll confirm what I saw. That was Eli's meaningful choice. Not dramatic, just a man handing over paper that might make his workday uglier because he remembered what it felt like not to be believed. Why would she do this? I asked. Eli gave me the look butchers give customers who ask if a bad roast can be saved by marinade. People do strange things when winning becomes proof they still exist. I carried that sentence around for days before I understood it. The next morning, I formally requested, as a joint account holder, all transfer documentation associated with account RV204 for the relevant dates. Kelly emailed the same sheets on prestige letterhead with her signature at the bottom. These are your account records, she said. They were always yours to ask for. I thanked her and didn't mention Eli. His photocopy had been kindness, not evidence. The letterhead was. At Shreveport, under a gray sky, I set a trap with a turn-in time. I ordered 2 briskets from Prestige on the account and 1 under my personal name, paid separately with my own debit card. The personal brisket stayed in my home fridge until I loaded it myself. The account briskets went into the shared cooler, photographed from every angle, batch codes clear. I told Tessa I was testing a new injection on my flat and asked her to focus on pork. She looked relieved. At midnight, I opened the shared cooler. My labeled Wagyu flat had become a prime flat with a familiar processor stamp. I photographed it, logbook open beside it, timestamp visible. Marlene from the next site over had agreed to witness. She was a quiet older woman who cooked with her grandson and had been awake tending her own fire when I asked.
You want me to sign something? She said, headlamp making a pale circle inside the cooler. Just initial the log. And if anyone asks, you saw what I saw. She looked at the packages and wrote her initials without comment. Some things don't need explaining to women who've been cooking alone long enough. I said nothing to Tessa. I put the flat back and cooked the personal brisket from my own cooler. Tessa didn't notice until morning. Where'd that one come from? She asked, nodding at the flat resting on my board. Backup. You brought a backup Wagyu? I'm a nervous woman with a credit card. Her laugh came a beat too late. We turned in. My brisket scored well. Not first, but honest. Tessa's brisket bombed.
8.0, which for her was practically a public illness. She took the score sheet behind the trailer and stood there a long time. I found her because I still cared. That was the stupid, stubborn truth. Receipts do not turn love off like a switch.
She sat on the trailer step, rubbing the fingertips of her right hand. "You okay?" I asked. She flinched. "Fine." "You've been doing that a lot." "What?" "Your hand." She tucked it under her thigh. "Old injury." "What injury?" "It's nothing." "Tess." She looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw fear without polish. "I had a nerve thing," she said. "Started last fall. Doctor called it cervical radiculopathy. Sounds like a dinosaur. Got worse in spring. By April, my fingers went numb for a while." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you'd fuss. Yes, how unbearable, your friend caring." She gave a small, humorless smile. "It messed with taste, too. Smell. Not gone, just muddy. Smoke tastes flat some days. Salt comes and goes. I thought it would clear up." My anger shifted. Not softer, but more complicated. "How long?" She looked at the gravel. "Since before Georgia, if I'm honest. I could still fake it some days. Then April came, and I couldn't pretend it was a bad week anymore." Georgia. Before the first public photo I'd found. Before Memphis. Before all of it. "Tessa?" "Don't," she said sharply. Then quieter. "Please don't say my name like that." There are confessions people give by accident because they cannot bear the direct one. I sat beside her, leaving a foot of space. "You could have told me." "And what? Dana Reyes, butcher's daughter, best palate in 3 states, carries poor broken Tessa through the season? That is not what I would have done." "You think sponsors care which half of R&V walks? They care that one of us is still up there." "You swapped my meat." Her eyes flashed. "I corrected allocations." I almost laughed. It came out like a cough. "Corrected allocations?" I was losing my palate. You were still selecting like a machine. You don't even understand how good you are at it. You'd pick 2 flats and say, "This one's mine, this one's yours," like God handing out weather. Her voice shook. "I needed the better margin." "So you gave me standard cuts and cooked my Wagyu under your name?" "I kept us visible." "You kept yourself visible." She stood. "You don't know what it's like to feel yourself aging out of the only thing that ever made you special." That stopped me because it was true in one narrow way. Tessa had built her whole self around being the woman who could win with fire. The trophies mattered to her differently. I loved competing, but I had a job, a house, a dog, my father's memory in my hands when I trimmed. Tessa had sponsorships that covered her trailer loan and rub costs. She had judging credentials. People called her for classes. If her palate failed, her whole structure shook. But fear does not make theft into strategy. "You should have trusted me," I said. She looked exhausted. "I did trust you. I trusted your eye." That sentence killed the last excuse I had been sheltering. I went home and built the last receipt. The sanctioning body's website kept public galleries of top finishes, including turn-in boxes and, when teams submitted them, prep photos used for social media. Tessa loved publicity. She submitted everything. I downloaded every image from the last 2 seasons where her brisket placed top 3. Meat has fingerprints, if you know what you taught your hands to do. My trim style on a brisket flat is not art, but it is consistent. I leave a narrow white ribbon of fat along the left edge, tapering it before the squared corner. My father taught me that because heat licks that edge hard in an offset smoker. I also make a shallow crescent cut near the thick end to even the surface.
Tessa used to over-trim that area until I made her practice on cheap flats in my driveway for an entire afternoon. You trim like you're mad at rent, I told her then. You trim like the cow left you instructions, she said. Over the years, she learned my method, but she never copied the crescent exactly. Hers was deeper, more angular. Mine looked like a thumbnail moon. In 3 public winning photos, the raw flat on Tessa's board had my left edge ribbon and my thumbnail crescent. In one image, a tiny nick near the corner matched a nick in my pre-trim photo, where I'd slipped with the boning knife while talking to a neighboring cook about generator noise.
I printed side-by-sides at the college library because my home printer made everything look photocopied underwater. I circled batch codes in blue. I marked timestamps. I did not editorialize. Paper has a cleaner voice when you let it speak. My complaint to the sanctioning body was 5 pages plus attachments. I wrote it 3 times to remove adjectives. I am requesting a confidential audit of source verification for top 3 brisket finishes by Tessa Vale / Reyes Vale BBQ for the 2023 and 2024 seasons. Attached are account pickup logs, processor transfer sheets formerly provided by Prestige Meats / West Fork for account RV-204, package photographs taken prior to competition prep, witnessed Shreveport cooler log, and public competition photographs showing batch code and trim pattern inconsistencies. I am not requesting reassignment of awards to myself. I am requesting verification of compliance with rules regarding declared team entries and source integrity. I also requested that my individual points and finishes be separated from the team designation for future qualification purposes. If Reyes and Vale was going down on paper, I needed to know what part of my record was still mine. That mattered. I was angry enough to want every trophy in her garage to melt. But revenge stops pretending to be justice when you ask to be crowned by someone else's disgrace. If I asked them to crown me retroactively, I would become the story. If I asked them to audit source verification, the receipts would become the story. I sent it on a Monday at 6:12 a.m., before I could lose nerve. Then I called Tessa. She answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, we need to talk." "I am not okay with any of this," I said. "But I didn't do this to you." She gave a short laugh. "That sounds tidy." "It's not tidy. It's all over my kitchen table in stacks." A pause. Then colder. "You always did love a receipt." "I loved trusting you more." She hung up. The audit took 7 weeks. During those 7 weeks, I learned how many objects in my life belonged to a friendship. The extra coffee mug in my cabinet, chipped on the rim, was Tessa's. The green Sharpie in my glove compartment was hers. Half the spice notes in our shared recipe notebooks were in her handwriting. The laminated checklist taped inside the trailer door, ice, gloves, Thermapen, parsley, don't panic, was something she made after I forgot parsley in Hot Springs and had to buy sad, curly garnish from a gas station. I asked her to return the recipe notebooks through Cali, neutral ground. She sent back 1 sauce binder and a box of my Cambro lids. The notebooks did not come. Text from Tessa. "Those are team property." Me. "The team is dissolved. Half the notes are mine." Tessa. "So sue me." I didn't. Not because she was right. The notebooks contained my father's brisket injection ratios and the pork rub I'd spent 3 seasons dialing in. Tessa knew them by heart anyway. I told myself that was why I let them go. Not because fighting for them would mean more phone calls, more letters, more proving. But really, I was just tired of proving. The sanctioning body contacted me twice for clarification. Once, they asked whether I could verify that the package photos were taken before turn-in. I provided phone metadata and Instagram drafts. Once, they asked if Eli would confirm the transfer sheets. He did. Callie later told me he got a formal warning for releasing copies too freely, but not fired. He says worth it, she said. He also says your brisket trim is fussy. He's not wrong. Prestige changed their account policy after that. Separate pins for separate authorized users.
No more customer requests split without written confirmation from both parties. Callie apologized until I told her to stop.
"We trusted the account," she said. So did I. When the certified letter came, I let it sit on my kitchen table for an hour. Junie sniffed it and found it uninteresting. Inside, the language was dry enough to cure ham. Following confidential audit of source records, batch code documentation, and supplier verification for sanctioned events dated May 14, June 22, September 8, October 2, and October 18, the committee finds that competitor Tessa Vale submitted entries under team designation and individual representation, using product not assigned to her declared competition inventory and inconsistent with verified source documentation. Consequences: disqualification of listed top 3 finishes, forfeiture of points, suspension of judging credentials for 2 seasons, notification to event organizers and sponsors were applicable. No retroactive placement changes would be made beyond disqualification unless event rules required it. The audit letter confirmed Reyes and Vale was dissolved as a registered team, and my future qualification points would start under Dana Reyes BBQ. I was starting from 0, but they were my zeros. I was relieved.
Then ashamed of being relieved. Then just tired. Tessa's sponsors reviewed her contracts. 2 dropped her. 1 paused pending brand alignment, which is corporate for, "We are waiting to see how loud this gets." Her classes disappeared from event flyers. Online, the barbecue boards did what barbecue boards do: speculated, exaggerated, defended, condemned, made jokes about meat custody. My name leaked within a day, though the complaint had been confidential. Barbecue people gossip like smoke. It gets into everything. Some folks called me brave. Some called me bitter. One man with a cartoon pig avatar wrote, "Women always bring drama to the pit," which was funny only because he had once thrown tongs at a judge's tent over chicken skin. I did not answer public comments. Tessa did. Her post was long, polished, and wounded. She admitted administrative mistakes in product allocation during a difficult health period. She did not say she swapped my meat. She did not say my name. She wrote, 15 years reduced to passive voice. I almost replied with the transfer sheet. My thumb hovered over upload. Then I remembered my own complaint. Let the receipts speak where they are supposed to speak. I put the phone down. The next qualifier I entered alone was in a fairground lot outside Denton, cold enough before dawn that my breath showed when I opened the trailer. I registered under Dana Reyes BBQ because I could not bear to invent something cute. The banner looked too small, the folding table looked too long. Every task had an echo where Tessa used to be. The cafeteria crew had signed a good luck card, all 17 of them, including the dishwasher who drew a brisket that looked like a shoe. I tucked it into my knife roll. First solo cook, and I had a whole kitchen behind me, even if they were 300 miles away. At 4:30 a.m., I realized I had no one to hold the flashlight while I adjusted the firebox latch. "Great," I muttered to Junie, who was not there because dogs were not allowed, abandoned by both woman and beast. Marlene was in the next spot again, headlamp already on, grandson asleep in a camp chair. She walked over without being asked. "You need light or sympathy?" "Light. Sympathy after turn-in." She held the beam steady while I fixed the latch. "First one solo?" she asked. "That obvious?" "You keep reaching to your left before you pick anything up." I looked down. My hand hovered over empty air where Tessa would have been handing me gloves. "Yeah," I said. "First one." Marlene nodded once. "Then today's mostly about learning where you put your own knives." That was the kindest thing anyone said to me all season. I cooked clean. Not inspired. Clean. Chicken turned in on time. Ribs a little tight. Pork better than expected. Brisket behaved like it had read the rules and wanted a good grade. Awards were held in a livestock pavilion that smelled like dust, hay, and old coffee. I stood in the back with my arms crossed. They called ribs. Nothing. Pork? Nothing.
chicken. 10th. Which made me laugh because chicken is a tiny tyrant, and 10th felt like escaping a parking ticket. Then brisket. 3rd through 4th passed. 3rd place brisket, Dana Reyes Barbecue. For half a second, I did not move because I was waiting for another name after mine. Marlene elbowed me. "That's you, solo!" I walked up to get the ribbon. It was not a grand champion check. It was not even first in brisket. It was a yellow ribbon with my name mispronounced by a man in a pearl snap shirt. I cried anyway. A month later, I won a qualifier outright. People like that part best. They want justice to come with a trophy because it photographs well. They want me to say winning alone felt better than winning with Tessa ever had. It didn't. It felt clean. It felt earned. It felt lonely. The team tent was cavernous without her. Nobody hummed off key while loading wood. After the qualifier, I drove home with the trophy buckled into the passenger seat because it was too tall for the floorboard. At a red light, I looked over and almost said, "Can you believe that brisket?" to empty vinyl. The light turned green. Someone honked gently behind me. Yeah, I said, and drove. Tessa and I never had the dramatic final confrontation people ask about. She mailed me my house key in a padded envelope with no note. I mailed her the green Sharpie because it had been in my glove compartment and I could not stand looking at it. She kept the recipe notebooks. I rebuilt from memory what I could. Some things came back exact, some came back better, some were gone. That is another thing receipts cannot do. They can prove what happened. They cannot restore what it felt like before you knew. The next season opened cold. I arrived before sunrise, early enough that the generators had not yet started their chorus. The sky was a dark blue bowl. My breath fogged when I lifted the cooler from the truck bed. For a second, habit reached for Tessa, her hands on the other handle, her voice saying, "Lift with your knees, butcher's daughter," as if she had not thrown her back out twice, ignoring that exact advice. But there was no other handle taken. I carried the cooler myself. At my table, I unwrapped the new cryovac brisket from butcher paper. Prestige had sealed it tight, the plastic smooth against the fat cap. I held it up toward the clip-on light out of old reflex. The marbling showed soft and even through the plastic. The fat cap caught the first hint of sunrise, a clean white ribbon along the edge. I reached for the Sharpie and wrote the batch code automatically. DRE. My hand stopped. For 15 years, those letters had meant my side of our shared order, my neat little system, my proof of care, my trust, labeled and handed into a cooler someone else could open. Not angry, just final. Beside it, I wrote, Dana 0312. The familiar format, letters, dash, numbers, but the letters were mine now. No initials borrowed from a partnership, just my name, my batch, my brisket. The sun lifted enough to turn the plastic gold. I ran my thumb over the cryovac, feeling the firm chill of the flat beneath, and thought, this is the one. Then I set it on the board and chose it entirely for myself. Back home, Junie would be waiting with her whole body wag, indifferent to trophies, but very interested in brisket scraps. I'd save her the crispy edge pieces. Nobody was going to steal those and call them quality checks.